She and her twin son sat alone in the restaurant. The billionaire CEO sitting at the other table with his son was the man who shattered her heart, but was too ashamed to talk. "Is that him, Mom? The man who keeps staring at us?" Larimar Frost's hand froze midway to her water glass, her heart suddenly pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She didn't need to turn around to know who her son was referring to. She had felt his presence the moment he walked in, a visceral, electric awareness she had spent 10 years trying to forget. "Which man, Maddox?" she asked, voice carefully steady as she met her son's inquisitive gaze, those striking amber eyes so hauntingly similar to his father's. "That one." Maddox nodded discreetly toward the corner table. "The man in the gray suit with the boy. He keeps looking over here like he knows you." "One. And he looks kind of like us," Finian added, his more observant twin studying the stranger with open curiosity, especially around the eyes. "Have you ever had a moment when your carefully constructed world threatens to collapse in an instant? When the past you've buried suddenly rises before you in the most public place possible? This is the story of a woman who came face to face with the man who abandoned her when she needed him most, the father of her children who doesn't even know they exist. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you loved with your whole heart, or wondered what would happen if that person suddenly reappeared in your life, this story will resonate in your soul. Give this video a like if you believe that some wounds never truly heal until we confront them directly. I'm Mr. Wentworth, and today I'm sharing the extraordinary story of Larimar Frost and Thayer Blackwell, former lovers reunited by chance after a decade of silence. With 3 children caught in the middle of their unresolved past, Larimar took a deliberately slow sip of water, buying precious seconds to compose herself as memories threatened to overwhelm her. The upscale Manhattan restaurant had seemed like a safe choice for celebrating the twins' 10th birthday, far from their Brooklyn neighborhood, an elegant treat they had been looking forward to for weeks. She had never imagined she would encounter Thayer Blackwell here, of all places. "He's probably just looking because you two are being so grown-up and well-behaved." She deflected, forcing warmth into her voice. Not many 10-year-olds know how to properly use 4 different forks. Finian preened at the compliment, but Maddox's eyes, too perceptive, too much like his father's, remained skeptical. He looked shocked, though, like he's seen a ghost. "One. If only you knew," Larimar thought, risking a quick glance toward the corner table. Thayer sat rigidly in his chair, his handsome face pale beneath his tan. The years had been good to him, his once lanky frame filled out with the confident bulk of success, silver threading elegantly through his dark hair at the temples. Beside him sat a boy around the twins' age, clearly his son, with the same strong jawline but softer features that must have come from his mother. Nephili, the socialite he had married 2 years after walking out of Larimar's life. The woman who had given him the one child he had chosen to acknowledge. "He's probably just one of Mom's authors," Finian suggested, returning to his chocolate souffle. "She knows lots of famous people." "Is he famous?" Maddox pressed, still watching Thayer. Larimar's laugh sounded brittle even to her own ears. "Once upon a time, he was a writer. Now he's a businessman. Please finish your dessert, boys. We have tickets to the planetarium at 3. Across the restaurant, Thayer Blackwell was experiencing his own private earthquake. 10 years of carefully constructed emotional walls were crumbling at the sight of Larimar Frost, still breathtakingly beautiful with her cascade of copper hair and eyes the clear blue-green of Caribbean waters. But it was the 2 boys with her that had stolen the air from his lungs. Twins, 10 years old, if his rapid mental calculation was correct, with his coloring, his eyes, the same cleft in their chins that had marked Blackwell men for generations. His sons, the sons he had never known existed. "Dad, are you okay?" Everest's voice broke through his spiral of shock. "You're staring at those people." Thayer forced his attention back to his son, his acknowledged son, the child of his brief, doomed marriage to Nephili. "I'm fine. I just recognized someone." "The pretty lady, or the boys?" Everest asked, glancing over with interest. "The boys look about my age." "The lady. We knew each other. A long time ago." Thayer's throat constricted around the inadequate words. Knew each other. As if Larimar had been a casual acquaintance, rather than the woman he had once asked to be his wife. The woman he had loved more fiercely than he had ever loved anyone, until fear and family pressure had driven him to make the worst mistake of his life. "Should we go say hi?" Everest suggested with the straightforward logic of a 10-year-old. "You keep looking at them." "No," The word came out sharper than he intended, making Everest flinch. Thayer moderated his tone. No, it's been too long. It would be awkward. Awkward. Another grotesquely inadequate word. How did you approach the woman whose heart you had shattered? The woman who had apparently been pregnant with your children when you walked away, telling her you weren't ready for the burden of family? As the waiter approached their table with the check, Thayer made a split-second decision. He handed over his black card and murmured, "Please add the bill for the lady and her sons at table 14. But don't tell them until after they've finished. I don't want to disturb their meal." The waiter nodded discreetly. "Very good, Mr. Blackwell. Thank you for watching." Thayer watched Larimar laugh at something one of the twins said, her head tilting back to expose the elegant line of her throat. The same throat he had once traced with reverent kisses, promising her forever. The familiar gesture sent him hurtling back through time, to the literary conference in Boston where they had first met 11 years ago. He had been nobody then, just another aspiring writer with a manuscript and desperate hopes. Larimar had already been making a name for herself as a sharp-eyed literary agent with an uncanny talent for spotting diamond in the rough authors. Their eyes had met across a crowded panel discussion, and Thayer had felt something shift in the universe. Later, he had worked up the courage to approach her at the reception, clutching a drink he was too nervous to sip. "Your question about authentic voice was brilliant," he had said, immediately wincing at his awkward opening. But Larimar had smiled, that radiant, life-changing smile. "You're the one writing about quantum entanglement and second chances, aren't you, Thayer Blackwell?" He had been stunned that she knew his name, too thunderstruck to do more than nod. "Your sample pages have been keeping me up at night." She had continued. "I've never read anything that balances scientific precision with such raw emotional truth. Please tell me the manuscript is finished and you don't have an agent yet." That night had changed everything. Within weeks, Larimar had signed him as a client. Within months, she had sold his novel in a bidding war that had stunned the publishing world. And somewhere between contract negotiations and late-night editorial discussions, they had fallen desperately, completely in love. "Dad?" Everest's voice pulled him back to the present. "You're doing it again." Staring. Thayer shook his head, forcing himself back to reality. "Sorry, buddy. Just lost in thought. Are you finished? We should get going." 1. As they stood to leave, Thayer found himself unable to walk directly to the exit, which would take him right past Larimar's table. Instead, he guided Everest toward the restrooms, taking the long way around. Cowardice, perhaps, but he couldn't face her without preparation. Not with the children present. Not with the weight of 10 years of silence between them. At her table, Larimar was similarly struggling to maintain her composure. The twins, thankfully, had moved on to discussing their upcoming planetarium visit, giving her space to process the shock of seeing Thayer. She had known this day might come eventually. Manhattan was only so big, and Thayer's rise to prominence in the tech world meant his face occasionally appeared in the business publications she skimmed. But she had imagined their potential reunion happening at an industry event, perhaps, where she would be professionally armored. Not here, on her son's birthday, when she was emotionally vulnerable and the boys were right there to witness it. "Excuse me, Miss Frost." The waiter appeared at her elbow. "I wanted to inform you that your bill has been taken care of." Larimar frowned in confusion. "There must be a mistake. We haven't asked for the check yet." "No mistake, ma'am. Mr. Blackwell asked to cover your table's expenses." The waiter nodded discreetly toward the now empty corner table. "He requested that I wait until after he left to inform you." A flush of anger heated Larimar's cheeks. How dare he? After 10 years of silence, his first communication was this grand gesture designed to, what? Impress her? Ease his conscience? Make her feel obligated? "Thank you for letting me know," she said tightly. "Please tell Mr. Blackwell we appreciate the gesture, should you see him again." The waiter nodded and withdrew, leaving Larimar to face her son's curious expressions. "Why did that man pay for our lunch?" Maddox asked, eyes narrowing suspiciously. "Is he one of your important authors?" Finian added. "The ones who send you flowers and try to get you to read their manuscripts faster?" Larimar almost laughed at the innocence of the assumption. If only it were that simple. "He's someone I used to know. A long time ago." Before us?" Maddox pressed. "Yes." Larimar took a deep breath. For 10 years, she had answered the twins' increasingly curious questions about their father with carefully constructed half-truths. He was someone she had loved once. He hadn't been ready for a family. He lived far away now. They had his eyes, his analytical mind, his dimples when they smiled. She had never told them his name, never shown them pictures. Never admitted that their father was Thayer Blackwell, the struggling writer-turned-tech mogul whose face occasionally appeared in the business sections of the papers. The man whose debut novel still sat, hidden and unread for a decade, on the highest shelf in her home office. Was he a boyfriend? Finian asked, his intuitive nature zeroing in on her discomfort. That's enough questions for now. Larimar deflected, signaling for the waiter. We should get going or we'll miss the planetarium show. This is your day, and I don't want to waste another minute of it. As they gathered their things, Larimar scanned the restaurant, half afraid, half hoping to catch another glimpse of Thayer. But he was gone, leaving behind only the echo of his presence and the unwelcome gift of a paid bill. Outside, the October air was crisp and bright, the perfect fall day for the twins' birthday celebrations. As they waited for the valet to bring their car, Larimar allowed herself a moment of bittersweet reflection. 10 years ago, her world had shattered when Thayer walked out. She had been 3 weeks pregnant, though she hadn't yet shared the news. His rejection had been absolute, his words devastating in their clarity. I'm not ready for marriage or family, Larimar. My career is just taking off, and I can't be tied down. You deserve someone who wants the same things you do. 2 weeks later, after countless unanswered calls and a final, desperate visit to his apartment where another woman had answered the door, Larimar had finally accepted the truth. Thayer had moved on, choosing his newfound success and freedom over their relationship. She had faced her pregnancy alone, never informing him, telling herself it was better this way. He had made his choice. She had made hers. And she had never regretted it. Not when she was struggling through morning sickness while maintaining her client list. Not during the difficult delivery when she had wished for someone's hand to hold. Not through the sleepless nights and challenging years of raising twin boys on her own, while building her literary agency into one of the most respected boutiques in New York. The twins were her world, her joy, her greatest accomplishment. She had given them a good life, a loving home, a strong community of friends who had become like family. They lacked for nothing that truly mattered. But seeing Thayer today, with his own son, a boy who looked so much like the twins that they could only be half-siblings, had reopened wounds she had thought long healed. It had also raised questions she had successfully avoided for a decade. Did the twins have a right to know their father? Did Thayer have a right to know his sons? What would happen if the truth finally emerged? The valet pulled up with their car, interrupting Larimar's troubling thoughts. As the boys climbed into the back seat, chattering excitedly about the planetarium, she took one last look at the restaurant entrance. For a moment, she thought she glimpsed Thayer watching from inside, but when she blinked, he was gone. Just a trick of the light. A ghost from her past that would hopefully fade back into memory. Little did she know that across town, Thayer Blackwell sat in the back of his chauffeured car, scrolling frantically through his phone for any information he could find on Larimar Frost and her sons. His sons? The children he had never known existed until today. If you've ever wondered what would happen if the person who broke your heart suddenly reappeared, hit that like button now. And if you believe children deserve to know their roots, even when those roots are complicated, subscribe to my channel for powerful stories that explore the messy reality of love, betrayal, and redemption. I'm Mr. Wentworth, and there's much more to this extraordinary reunion coming up. In the days following the restaurant encounter, Larimar threw herself into work with almost frantic intensity. Her literary agency, Frost and Associates, had grown from a one-woman operation into a boutique powerhouse, representing some of the most distinctive voices in contemporary fiction. With fall publishing season in full swing, she had legitimate reasons for the long hours. Manuscript reviews, contract negotiations, an auction brewing for her newest client's memoir. But she knew she was really hiding. From the memory of Thayer's face, from the questions the twins had mercifully stopped asking after the planetarium visit had distracted them. From her own tumultuous emotions that refused to settle back into their carefully constructed compartments. You've been staring at the same page for 10 minutes, observed Zara, her assistant and right hand for the past 8 years. Whatever's on that manuscript must be fascinating. 1. Larimar blinked, realizing Zara was right. The words on her tablet had blurred into meaningless shapes as her mind wandered back to the restaurant for the 100th time. Just tired, she deflected, setting the device down. The twins had nightmare-induced musical beds last night. Zara's expression softened. She had been with Larimar since the boys were toddlers, watching them grow alongside the agency. They're still shaken up from that horror movie at Declan's sleepover? Apparently zombie clowns make a lasting impression on 10-year-old boys. Larimar smiled wryly. Even tough guys like mine. Speaking of impressions, Zara said carefully, sliding a business magazine across the desk. This came in today's mail. I thought you should see it. Larimar's pulse quickened as she recognized Thayer's face on the cover. The headline read, Blackwell Technologies' Quantum Leap, How One Man's Literary Past Shaped a Tech Empire. There's a pretty extensive profile, Zara continued, watching Larimar's reaction closely, including some personal history you might find relevant. Of course, Zara knew. She had been there during Larimar's most vulnerable moments, had seen the uncanny resemblance between the twins and the occasionally photographed tech mogul, had no doubt pieced together the timeline years ago. But she had never asked directly, respecting Larimar's privacy with characteristic discretion. Larimar's fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the magazine. Thank you. I'll read it later. There's one more thing. Zara hesitated. His office called while you were in your contract meeting. Twice. They said it's regarding a potential literary project, but you think it's personal, Larimar finished, her mouth suddenly dry. The second call came from him directly. He asked specifically for you, not just any agent at the firm. Larimar closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. She had known this was coming from the moment she'd seen him at the restaurant. Thayer was nothing if not thorough. Once he'd recognized the twins, he would have investigated, confirmed his suspicions, and formulated a plan. That was who he was. The strategic thinker whose mind never stopped working, even when his heart had proved so fickle. If he calls again, put him through, she said finally. Might as well get it over with. Zara nodded, relief evident in her expression. For what it's worth, the boys deserve to know where they come from. Even if he island. She trailed off diplomatically. Even if he is the man who walked away without a backward glance? Larimar supplied. The man who chose his career over our relationship and has since built a billion-dollar empire, while I've been teaching the twins to tie their shoes and managing author egos. But the man whose features I see every time the boys smile, Zara corrected gently. The man whose analytical mind Maddox inherited, whose creative imagination flows through Finian's stories. Larimar's throat tightened. Zara was right, of course. For all her justifications about protecting the twins from rejection, she had also been protecting herself from the pain of watching Thayer walk away a second time, this time from their sons. I'll handle it, she promised. Whatever it turns out to be. The call came the next morning, just after she had sent the twins off to school with their longtime sitter, Orla. Larimar was reviewing submission letters when her direct line rang, Zara's apologetic voice coming through the speaker. Larimar, I have Thayer Blackwell on line 1. He says it's about a potential literary property, but he'd prefer to speak with you directly. Taking a deep breath, Larimar straightened her shoulders. Put him through. A click, then silence. For a moment, Larimar wondered if the connection had failed. Then his voice came through, deeper than she remembered, with a careful control that hadn't been there in his younger years. Larimar, thank you for taking my call. Thayer. She kept her tone professionally neutral. Zara mentioned something about a literary property? A soft exhale, almost a laugh. Always direct. That hasn't changed. 10 years is a long time. Many things have changed. Yes. The single syllable carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken words, including the fact that I apparently have twin sons I knew nothing about. And there it was. No pretense, no circling the subject. Straight to the heart of the matter in typical Thayer fashion. You made your position on family quite clear when you ended our engagement. Larimar replied, proud of how steady her voice remained despite her racing heart. I was simply respecting your wishes. By never telling me you were pregnant? By raising my children for 10 years without a single word? The accusation sparked a flare of anger that burned through Larimar's careful composure. You mean the pregnancy I discovered 3 weeks after you told me you weren't ready for marriage or family? After you stopped answering my calls? After I came to your apartment and found another woman there? That pregnancy? Silence stretched between them, laden with a decade of pain and misunderstanding. We need to talk, Thayer finally said, his voice quieter. Not over the phone. In person. I have nothing to say to you. Then just listen, please Larimar, for the boys' sake, if not for ours. The mention of the twins cracked her resolve. Whatever her feelings toward Thayer, this wasn't just about them anymore. It hadn't been for 10 years. Fine. My office, tomorrow at 11. It's the only opening in my schedule this week. Thank you. The relief in his voice was palpable. And Larimar? What are their names? Our sons. Something twisted in her chest at the possessive pronoun, at the hunger in his voice to know this most basic information about the children he had never met. Maddox and Finian, she said after a moment. Maddox is older by 12 minutes. More analytical. Like you. Finian is the dreamer. The storyteller. Maddox and Finian, he repeated, as if committing the names to memory. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. After hanging up, Larimar sat motionless, trying to process what had just happened. After 10 years of raising the twins alone, of answering their questions about their absent father with carefully crafted half-truths, of building a life that didn't include Thayer Blackwell in any form, everything was about to change. For better or worse, the past she had tried so hard to leave behind had caught up with her, and tomorrow, she would have to face it, and him, head-on. That night, after the twins were asleep, Larimar finally opened the magazine Zara had given her. The profile on Thayer was extensive, tracing his unlikely journey from acclaimed debut novelist to tech innovator and billionaire CEO. Most of it she already knew, either from her own experience or from the occasional news she couldn't avoid. How his first and only novel, Quantum Entanglement, had been both a critical darling and surprise commercial hit. How he had used his advance to invest in a friend's struggling tech startup, which had then developed a revolutionary quantum encryption algorithm based partly on concepts from Thayer's novel. How that initial investment had grown into Blackwell Technologies, now a global leader in quantum computing and security systems. What she hadn't known, what made her hands tremble as she read, was the personal history the article revealed. His brief, turbulent marriage to socialite Nephili Vaughn, which had produced his son Everest before ending in a highly publicized divorce when the boy was just 3. The tragic death of his manipulative mother, Sinov, 2 years earlier. His reputation as a dedicated single father who scheduled board meetings around his son's school events. The article painted him as a complex figure, brilliant but private, driven but ethical, demanding but deeply loyal to his inner circle. It mentioned his famous reclusiveness, his refusal to discuss his literary past, his rare public appearances outside of business contexts. There was no mention of Larimar, of their engagement, of the time before his success when he had been a struggling writer with nothing but talent and ambition. That chapter of his life had been neatly excised from the official narrative, as if it had never existed. As she closed the magazine, Larimar wondered what version of Thayer she would encounter tomorrow. The sensitive writer she had fallen in love with? The ruthless businessman who had discarded her when she no longer fit his plans? Or some new iteration, shaped by fatherhood and the passage of time? Whatever the answer, she needed to be prepared, not just for herself, but for Maddox and Finian, whose world might soon be turned upside down by the father they had never known. Morning came too quickly, bringing with it a knot of anxiety in Larimar's stomach that no amount of herbal tea could dissolve. She dressed with careful deliberation, a sage green wrap dress that brought out the color of her eyes, simple gold jewelry, hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, professional but not severe, attractive, but not as if she had made a special effort. Armor, of a sort, against whatever the meeting might bring. The conference room is ready, Zara informed her at precisely 10:45. Water, coffee, those little almond cookies he used to like. At Larimar's raised eyebrow, she shrugged unapologetically. What? I remember things. I remember things. You're incorrigible, Larimar said, but she was grateful for the momentary lightness. Hold all my calls unless it's the twin school. Of course. Zara hesitated. Do you want me to tell you when he arrives, or just send him in? Larimar considered. Part of her wanted the warning, the chance to compose herself. Another part preferred to just rip off the bandage, to face him without the additional torture of anticipation. Just send him in, she decided. Let's not drag this out. At exactly 11 o'clock, punctual as ever, Thayer Blackwell walked into Larimar's office. He wore a charcoal suit that screamed bespoke tailoring, no tie, his dark hair styled in the artfully tousled way that probably required an expensive stylist despite appearing effortless. Success looked good on him, Larimar admitted grudgingly. The years had added character to his handsome features, confidence to his posture, an air of authority that hadn't been there in his 20s. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. the weight of their shared past and separate decades hanging in the air between them. "Thank you for seeing me," he said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "You didn't leave me much choice." Larimar gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Please, sit." Thayer did so, his movements fluid but with an underlying tension she recognized from their publishing days. He was nervous, though he hid it well. "You have a beautiful office," he observed, glancing around at the book-lined walls, the large windows overlooking Madison Avenue, the tasteful modern furniture. "The agency has clearly thrived under your leadership." "Let's skip the small talk, Thayer." Larimar folded her hands on her desk. "You didn't come here to discuss my decorating choices or business success." A flicker of something, admiration, amusement, crossed his face, still cutting straight to the heart of things. "All right then." He leaned forward, amber eyes intent on hers. "I have sons. Twin sons I knew nothing about until I saw them with you at Oriole 3 days ago." "Yes. They're 10 years old, which means you were pregnant when we—" He couldn't seem to find the right word. "When you ended our engagement," Larimar supplied coolly. "Yes, I was about 3 weeks along. I hadn't taken a test yet, but I suspected." "No. And you didn't tell me." It wasn't quite a question, but the hurt and confusion in his voice were unmistakable. "I tried. I called you repeatedly after you walked out. I came to your apartment and found Nephile there, wearing your shirt." The memory still had the power to sting, even after all these years. "You made your choice very clear, Thayer. You didn't want the burden of a wife or family holding back your career. So, when I confirmed the pregnancy, I decided to respect your wishes and handle it myself." "Handle it?" He broke off, a flush of anger coloring his cheekbones. "These are our children, Larimar, not a publishing contract. You didn't think I deserved to know?" "Deserved?" Larimar's carefully maintained composure cracked. "What about what I deserved, Thayer? A partner who wouldn't abandon me the moment success came calling. A man who would stand by his promises. The twins deserved a father who wanted them, who would put them first. You made it abundantly clear that wasn't you." "I would have stepped up if I'd known," he insisted, jaw tight with suppressed emotion. "Whatever my failings in our relationship, I would never have abandoned my own children." "Really?" The man who told me, and I quote, "I'm not ready for marriage or family, Larimar. My career is just taking off, and I can't be tied down." That man would have embraced impending fatherhood with open arms? Thayer flinched as his own words came back to haunt him. "I was young, scared. Success hit so fast, and suddenly there were expectations. Opportunities I never imagined possible. I handled it badly. I know that. But it doesn't justify keeping my sons from me for 10 years. I was protecting them." Larimar said quietly, "from the pain of rejection, from being an obligation rather than a joy, from watching their father put everything else before them, the way you put everything else before us." A heavy silence fell between them. Outside, Manhattan traffic flowed 15 stories below, the sound muffled by the thick windows. Inside, the weight of a decade of separate lives, of choices made and paths not taken, pressed down on them both. "I have a son," Thayer said finally. "Everest. He's the same age as the twins, born just 4 months later." The confirmation of what she had already surmised still landed like a blow. For months after walking out on their engagement, he had not only moved on to Nephile but had started another family. The timeline spoke volumes. "I saw him at the restaurant," she acknowledged, keeping her voice neutral. "He looks like you." "So do Maddox and Finian." Thayer's expression softened slightly. "It was like looking at photographs of myself at that age. The moment I saw them, I knew." "What do you want, Thayer?" Larimar asked directly. "Why are you here? To accuse me of keeping secrets? To demand visitation rights? To satisfy your curiosity about the sons you never knew existed?" He met her gaze steadily. "I want to know my sons. I want them to know me, and their half-brother. I want to be part of their lives going forward, however you think is best for them." He paused, then added quietly, "And I want to apologize to you, Larimar, for everything." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the entitled billionaire demanding his rights. This was something closer to the man she had once loved, thoughtful, direct, capable of acknowledging his mistakes. "It's not that simple," she said, softening despite herself. "The twins have grown up without you. They have questions about their father, but they have a stable, happy life. Introducing you now would change everything for them. They deserve to know where they come from." Thayer argued. Who they come from? Don't they have a right to that knowledge, that relationship? And Everest deserves to know his brothers. Larimar had asked herself these same questions countless times over the years, especially as the twins grew older and their inquiries about their father became more specific. She had always told herself that protecting them from Thayer's rejection was more important than biological connections. But now, facing him across her desk, she had to confront the possibility that she had been protecting herself as much as the boys. "I need time," she said finally. "Time to think about how to approach this with Maddox and Finian. Time to process what this means for all of us." Relief washed over Thayer's features. "Thank you. That's all I'm asking for right now. A chance." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card, sliding it across the desk. "My personal number is on the back. Call me when you're ready to talk next steps." As he stood to leave, he hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, Larimar, you've done an amazing job with them. From the little I observed, they're incredible boys. A testament to your strength and love." The unexpected praise brought a lump to Larimar's throat. "They are amazing. The best parts of both of us, I think." A shadow of regret crossed Thayer's face. "I've missed so much." "Yes," she agreed simply. "You have." After he left, Larimar sat motionless at her desk, turning his business card over in her fingers. The embossed front displayed his professional information. Thayer Blackwell, CEO, Blackwell Technologies. On the back, in his familiar handwriting, was a phone number and 2 words, "I'm sorry." How would the twins react to learning their father's identity? To discovering they had a half-brother? To suddenly having Thayer Blackwell, brilliant, wealthy, complicated Thayer, in their lives after a decade of absence? And how would she navigate co-parenting with the man who had broken her heart so thoroughly that she had never fully opened it again? Questions without easy answers. Decisions that would change all their lives irrevocably. That evening, watching Maddox and Finian at their homework, heads bent in identical poses of concentration, Maddox methodically solving math problems while Finian crafted an elaborate creative writing assignment, Larimar felt the full weight of her responsibility. These precious boys, her whole world, would soon face a truth that might hurt them, confuse them, or possibly enrich their lives in ways she couldn't predict. "Mom?" Finian looked up, catching her watching them. "Are you okay? You look sad." Perceptive as always, her sensitive son could read her moods better than anyone. "I'm not sad, sweetheart," she assured him, moving to ruffle his dark hair. "Just thinking about how lucky I am to have you both." "Is it about that man from the restaurant?" Maddox asked suddenly, his amber eyes, so like Thayer's, missing nothing. "The one who paid for our lunch?" "One." Larimar's breath caught. "Why do you ask?" "Because you've been different since then. Distracted. And you keep looking at us like..." He struggled to find the words. "Like you're worried about something." Finian finished for his twin. They were too smart, too observant, these sons of hers. Of theirs. Perhaps it was time for the truth, or at least the beginning of it. "The man at the restaurant is someone I used to know very well," she said carefully, sitting down between them at the kitchen table. "Someone who was once very important to me." "Was he our dad?" Maddox asked bluntly. Always the direct one. Larimar's heart pounded painfully against her ribs. "Yes," she admitted, the single word changing everything. "His name is Thayer Blackwell, and he would like to meet you both. If you've ever had to make a difficult decision about whether to let someone back into your life after they've hurt you deeply, hit that like button. And if you're wondering how Maddox and Finian will react to meeting their father for the first time and discovering they have a half-brother, subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth. The most emotional part of this family's journey is still to come, and you won't want to miss what happens when these children finally come face to face with the father they never knew. The silence that followed Larimar's revelation seemed to stretch for an eternity. Maddox and Finian stared at her with identical expressions of shock, their homework forgotten on the kitchen table between them. "Thayer Blackwell?" Finian finally whispered. "The tech guy? The one who's in your business magazine sometimes?" Larimar nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "Yes. Before he was in tech, he was a writer. That's how we met. I was his literary agent." "And he's really our father?" Maddox's analytical mind was clearly processing this information, connecting dots. The one who wasn't ready for a family? "The very same," Larimar confirmed, watching their faces carefully for signs of distress. "Is that why you looked so weird at the restaurant?" Finian asked. Because you saw him there? Yes, I hadn't seen him in person for 10 years. It was unexpected. Did he know about us? Maddox's question went straight to the heart of the matter, as his questions often did. Larimar took a deep breath. This was the moment for complete honesty, however difficult. No, I found out I was pregnant after we had already broken up. I tried to contact him initially, but he had made it clear he didn't want a family at that time. So I decided to raise you on my own. So he didn't abandon us on purpose? Finian's voice held a note of cautious hope that squeezed Larimar's heart. He just didn't know? It's complicated, sweetheart. He did walk away from our relationship, but he didn't know about you specifically. And now he wants to meet us? Maddox's expression was guarded, suspicious in a way that reminded Larimar painfully of Thayer when he was assessing a situation. Why? After all this time? He saw you at the restaurant and recognized himself in you both. He came to see me today, and he would like to get to know you. Larimar reached out to take each of their hands. But this is entirely your decision. If you're not ready or don't want to meet him, you don't have to. The twins exchanged one of their mysterious looks, communicating in that silent language that had fascinated Larimar since their infancy. The boy who was with him, Finian said slowly. Is he? His son, Larimar confirmed gently. Your half-brother. His name is Everest. So he did want a family, Maddox concluded, a hint of hurt in his voice. Just not with us. Life isn't that simple, Maddox. People make choices they later regret. They grow and change. Larimar squeezed his hand. When Thayer and I were together, we were very young, and his career was just beginning. He wasn't ready for the responsibility then. But he is now? Finian asked. He says he island, and he's been raising Everest as a single father for several years now. Another silent exchange passed between the twins. I think I want to meet him, Finian said finally. And Everest too. I've always wanted a brother besides Maddox. Hey, Maddox protested, but without heat. You know what I mean. Finian bumped his brother's shoulder. Someone new. Someone who might be like us. More. Maddox was quiet for a moment, his amber eyes, so like Thayer's, thoughtful. I have questions for him, he said finally. Things I want to know. Things. Larimar nodded, understanding completely. For years, the twins had stored up questions about their father, about his likes and dislikes, his talents and traits, about why he wasn't in their lives. Now they had a chance to ask those questions directly. I'll arrange it, she promised. But I want you both to understand something very important. She waited until she had their full attention. No matter what happens with Thayer, no matter what relationship develops between you and him, nothing changes how much I love you. Nothing changes our family. We're still us, the three of us, no matter what. We know that, Mom, Finian said with the simple confidence of a child who has never doubted his mother's love. Yeah, duh, Maddox added with 10-year-old eloquence. You're our mom. He's just some guy who happens to be our biological father. The casual dismissal brought a small smile to Larimar's lips, even as she wondered how long that attitude would last once they actually met Thayer. Their father was many things, but just some guy had never been one of them. When can we meet him? Finian asked, already moving past the shock to excitement. I'll call him tomorrow, and we'll arrange something. Larimar pulled both boys into a tight hug. I love you both so much. You know that, right? We know, Mom, they chorused, hugging her back before wriggling free with the typical distaste for prolonged affection that had recently developed. Later that night, after the twins were asleep, Larimar sat on her balcony overlooking the twinkling lights of Brooklyn. She had moved to this brownstone when the twins were toddlers, carefully renovating the space into a warm, book-filled home that reflected their literary tastes and creative spirits. Every corner held memories of their life together. The height marks on the kitchen doorframe, the framed finger paintings in the hallway, the overflowing bookshelves in every room. Would Thayer's entry into their lives change all that? Would his wealth and status make their comfortable but modest lifestyle seem inadequate by comparison? Would the twins be dazzled by the trappings of his success, drawn to the father who could offer them material advantages she couldn't match? With trembling fingers, she reached for her phone and the business card she had placed beside it. It was nearly midnight, too late for a professional call, but this was far beyond professional now. This was about their children. He answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. Larimar? I told them, she said without preamble. About you. They want to meet you. She heard his sharp intake of breath. Thank you. The two words carried the weight of a decade of absence. When? This weekend, if you're available. Somewhere neutral, I think. Not your office or our home. Of course. He was quiet for a moment. Would they be comfortable meeting Everest at the same time? Or would that be too much at once? Larimar considered the question. I think they're actually curious about him. Finian specifically mentioned wanting to meet his brother. Brothers, Thayer corrected gently. Everest has been asking about them non-stop since the restaurant. I've told him what little I know. What have you told him about me? About why he didn't know about his brothers until now? Thayer sighed, the sound carrying clearly through the phone. The truth, or as much of it as a 10-year-old can understand. That I made mistakes when I was younger. That I didn't know about Maddox and Finian until now. That their mother had raised them beautifully on her own. And he accepted that? He has questions, like any child would. But Everest Island, remarkably adaptable. After his mother left, he learned to take life's complications in stride. The mention of Nephili's absence sparked Larimar's curiosity, but she pushed it aside. Thayer's relationship with his ex-wife wasn't her concern. Saturday, she decided. There's a place called Riverside Park near us. It has a good playground, open space. The boys like it there. Riverside Park sounds perfect. What time? 11? We could bring lunch. Make it casual. I'll be there. Thayer paused, then added, Thank you, Larimar, for giving me this chance. For raising our son so well. For everything. The sincerity in his voice threatened to crack the walls she had built around her heart over the past decade. Don't thank me yet, Thayer. This is just the beginning of a very complicated journey. I know, but it's a journey I never thought I'd get to take. So thank you for opening the door. After they hung up, Larimar remained on the balcony, gazing at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. What would Saturday bring? Joy, pain, connection, disappointment? All she knew for certain was that their carefully constructed life was about to change fundamentally. She could only hope it would be for the better. Saturday dawned clear and crisp, a perfect October day. Larimar woke early, too anxious to sleep, and found the twins already up and dressed, their nervous energy manifesting in unusual tidiness and cooperation. We made breakfast, Finian announced proudly, gesturing to the somewhat lopsided pancakes on the table. And we didn't even burn down the kitchen, Maddox added with a grin. I'm impressed, Larimar said. Taking in their carefully chosen outfits, Maddox in his favorite blue button-down, Finian in a graphic tee featuring constellations. They had even attempted to tame their perpetually disheveled dark hair. You two look very handsome. Do you think he'll like us? Finian asked suddenly, vulnerability breaking through his excitement. He'd be a fool not to, Larimar assured him, pulling him into a quick hug. You're the most amazing boys in New York. In the world, Maddox corrected with mock seriousness. In the universe, Finian topped him, their familiar game lightening the moment. They arrived at Riverside Park 30 minutes early, giving the twins time to burn off some nervous energy on the playground while Larimar set up their picnic on a nearby table. She had packed their favorites, turkey and avocado sandwiches, apple slices with caramel dip, the chocolate chip cookies they had baked together the night before. Normal food for what would be a profoundly abnormal day. At precisely 11 o'clock, punctual as ever, Thayer appeared at the park entrance with a boy beside him. Everest was slightly taller than the twins, with the same dark hair but features that must have come from his mother, softer, with a straight nose rather than the slightly crooked one that Thayer and the twin shared. Larimar's breath caught as she watched father and son approach. Thayer had dressed down for the occasion in jeans and a casual sweater, though the watch on his wrist probably cost more than her monthly mortgage payment. His expression was a complex mix of apprehension, hope, and barely contained emotion. Mom, Maddox called from the playground. Is that them? Larimar nodded, waving the twins over. They approached cautiously, falling into step on either side of her like bookends. Larimar, Thayer said when they reached speaking distance, his voice carefully controlled. Thank you for arranging this. Thayer, she nodded, then looked at the boy beside him. And you must be Everest. It's nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too, Miss Frost. Everest replied with the polished manners of a child raised in privilege. His eyes, however, were fixed curiously on the twins. These are my sons, Larimar said, placing a hand on each boy's shoulder. Maddox and Finian. Our sons, Thayer corrected quietly, his amber eyes, so like the twins, drinking in the sight of the boys. "Hello, Maddox. Hello, Finian. I'm very glad to finally meet you." The four of them stood in awkward silence, studying each other with undisguised curiosity. It was Everest who broke the tension, stepping forward with childish directness. "So you're my brothers," he said, looking between the twins. "That's pretty cool. I always wanted brothers." "Half-brothers," Maddox corrected, ever precise. "Still brothers," Finian countered with a small smile. "Do you like space? I'm wearing my constellation shirt." "Space is awesome," Everest agreed enthusiastically. "Dad took me to the planetarium last month for my birthday. They have this amazing show about black holes." "We love the planetarium." Finian's face lit up. "We just went for our birthday too." "When's your birthday?" Everest asked. "October 12th, Maddox replied. "Mine's February 8th, Everest said. "So you're older than me." By 4 months." Maddox nodded, having clearly done the math already. The ice broken, the three boys fell into conversation with the easy camaraderie of children, leaving Larimar and Thayer standing awkwardly to the side. "They look so much like you," Thayer said quietly, his eyes never leaving the twins. "It's uncanny." "They have your analytical mind too," Larimar replied. "Especially Maddox. Finian has more of my creative tendencies, but he has your love of astronomy." "And my crooked nose," Thayer added with a small smile, touching the slight bump on his own nose. "The result of a childhood baseball incident. Poor kids." "I've always liked your nose," Larimar said without thinking, then flushed slightly at the admission. Thayer's expression softened. "Should we join them? I've packed some drinks and snacks, though I see you've brought lunch." "Yes, let's." She led the way to the picnic table, calling to the boys. "Who's hungry? We've got sandwiches and cookies." The boys needed no further encouragement, racing to the table with the perpetual hunger of growing children. What followed was a surprisingly pleasant lunch, the initial awkwardness gradually giving way to genuine conversation. The three boys discovered shared interests in space, video games, and a popular graphic novel series. Everest was curious about what it was like to have a twin, while Maddox and Finian peppered him with questions about his life. "So you live in a penthouse?" Finian asked, eyes wide. "Like, at the very top of a building?" "Yeah, it's pretty high up," Everest confirmed. "You can see Central Park from my bedroom." "That's cool," Maddox admitted grudgingly. "We can see a brick wall from our room." "But we have a backyard," Finian added loyally, "with a treehouse Mom helped us build." "A treehouse?" Everest looked impressed. "That's awesome. I just have a balcony." While the boys chatted, Larimar observed Thayer watching them with naked longing in his expression. He seemed almost afraid to speak directly to the twins, as if they might vanish if he approached them too quickly. "They don't bite," she said quietly, nudging him. "They're curious about you." "I don't know where to start," he admitted. "There's so much I want to know, so much I've missed." "Start with something simple. What they like, what they're interested in. The deep stuff can come later." Taking her advice, Thayer turned to the twins. "So, I hear you two are into space? That was my favorite subject when I was your age too." "Really?" Finian perked up. "Mom said you wrote a book about quantum physics or something." "Quantum entanglement," Thayer corrected with a smile. "It was science fiction, but based on real quantum theories. I used to drive your mom crazy with all my research questions. He'd call me at midnight with some new revelation about particle physics." Larimar recalled, the memory unexpectedly fond. "I knew nothing about quantum mechanics, but I had to learn quickly." "Mom reads all our science homework to help us," Maddox said. "Even the hard stuff." "That sounds like her," Thayer agreed. "She always was the most thorough agent in publishing. No detail too small. No detail. No detail. 5. "Is that how you met?" Finian asked curiously. "Through her work?" Thayer glanced at Larimar, silently asking permission to share their history. At her nod, he continued, "Yes, I was a very nervous writer with my first book, and your mom was already making a name for herself as a literary agent. I practically begged her to read my manuscript. And it was brilliant," Larimar added, giving credit where it was due. "One of the most original stories I'd ever read." "You still have a copy?" Maddox asked, surprising both adults. "Of his book?" Larimar hesitated. "Yes, on my office shelf. But you never showed it to us." "It was complicated, Maddox. That book represented a time in my life that was both wonderful and painful. Could we read it? Finian asked. Perhaps someday, Thayer intervened smoothly. It's pretty advanced reading, even for smart guys like you. But I'd be happy to tell you about the story sometime. The conversation continued to flow surprisingly easily after that. Thayer gradually relaxed, his natural charm and intelligence engaging the twins as he answered their increasingly direct questions. Why didn't you want a family when Mom told you about us? Maddox finally asked, the question Larimar had been dreading all day. Thayer's face grew serious. That's a fair question, Maddox. The truth is, I was young and scared. My career was just taking off, things were moving very fast, and I convinced myself I wasn't ready for the responsibility of a family. But you had Everest just a few months later. Finian pointed out with the merciless logic of a child. I did. Thayer nodded, not shying away from the difficult truth. And that was a complicated situation. But the most important thing you both need to know is that my failure to be there for you was never about you. It was about my own fears and shortcomings. If I had known about you, if I had made different choices back then, I would have been honored to be your father from day one. The sincerity in his voice seemed to satisfy the twins, at least for the moment. Larimar felt a confusing mix of emotions, gratitude that he hadn't tried to sugarcoat the truth, resentment that he could simply apologize for an absence that had shaped her entire past decade, hope that perhaps this relationship could work for the boys' sake. As the afternoon progressed, the three boys gravitated back to the playground, leaving Larimar and Thayer alone at the picnic table. They're extraordinary, Thayer said, watching the twins challenge Everest to a climbing competition. Smart, thoughtful, confident. You've done an amazing job, Larimar. They make it easy, she replied, the familiar maternal pride swelling in her chest. They came into this world with strong personalities already intact. Like their mother. His smile was warm, genuine. And their father, I suppose. Though you've clearly been the better influence. Don't sell yourself short. Your intelligence, your creativity, those are wonderful qualities they've inherited. She hesitated, then added, Maddox has your focus, that ability to block out everything but the problem at hand. And Finian has your imagination, the way you can see connections others miss. Thank you for seeing those things, Thayer said quietly, for not erasing me completely from their lives, even when you had every reason to. I never lied to them about you, Larimar said. I just edited the story to protect them, and perhaps myself as well. I understand. Thayer's gaze returned to the playground, where Everest was now showing the twins a complicated handshake he had learned at his private school. Everest has taken to them immediately. He's been lonely, I think. Being an only child of divorced parents isn't easy. No, I imagine not. Larimar hesitated, then asked the question that had been nagging at her. Nephili isn't involved in his life? A shadow crossed Thayer's face. Nephili found motherhood inconvenient. When Everest was 3, she decided her modeling career in Europe was more important than raising her son. The divorce was actually her idea. She wanted freedom from family obligations. His laugh was without humor. Ironic, isn't it? I left you because I wasn't ready for a family, then ended up raising a child alone anyway. Life has a way of coming full circle. Larimar agreed. But you stepped up for Everest. That says something about the man you've become. I'm trying to be better than I was, Thayer said simply. Every day. Their conversation was interrupted by the boys racing back to the table, flushed and excited from their play. Dad, can Maddox and Finian come see our play sometime? Everest asked, the term dad causing the twins to glance at each other uneasily. I told them about my telescope and my gaming setup. That would be up to their mother, Thayer replied diplomatically, looking to Larimar. Perhaps someday soon, she agreed cautiously. For now, let's take things one step at a time. But we'll see them again, right? Everest pressed, already forming attachments to his newfound brothers. I'd like that very much, Thayer said, looking directly at the twins. If you'd like to, of course. Maddox and Finian exchanged one of their silent twin communications, then nodded in unison. Yeah, that would be cool, Maddox said with studied casualness. Really cool. Finian agreed more enthusiastically. As the afternoon came to a close, Larimar watched Thayer say goodbye to the twins, his movements awkward but heartfelt. He didn't try to hug them, respecting their boundaries, but the longing to do so was evident in every line of his body. Thank you for meeting me today, he told them solemnly. It means more to me than I can express. I hope this is just the beginning of getting to know each other. We have school science projects due next week, Finian informed him. But maybe the weekend after? I'll make myself available whenever you're ready. Thayer promised, the billionaire CEO clearing his schedule for two 10-year-old boys he had just met. Just let your mother know what works for you, Faye. On the way home, the twins were uncharacteristically quiet, processing the momentous day in their own ways. What did you think? Larimar finally asked as they approached their brownstone. He's not what I expected, Maddox said thoughtfully. He's normal, for a billionaire. I mean, Everest is cool, Finian added. He knows all the same games we do, even though he goes to that fancy private school. And Thayer? What did you think of him? Another twin exchange of glances. He seems like he really wants to know us, Finian said. Like, for real. Not just because he thinks he should. Not. He has your book on his shelf too, Maddox revealed. Everest told us. The one he wrote. He keeps it in his office where he can see it every day. This unexpected information caught Larimar off guard. The thought of Thayer preserving that connection to their past, displaying the book that had brought them together, stirred emotions she had long suppressed. He made a big mistake, didn't he? Finian asked suddenly. Leaving you. Leaving us. Yes. Larimar answered honestly. He did. But people make mistakes, especially when they're young and scared. The important thing is whether they learn from those mistakes and try to do better. Do you think he has? Maddox's penetrating gaze reminded her so much of Thayer that it made her heart ache. I think he's trying, she said carefully. Time will tell if he's truly changed. Are you still mad at him? Finian wanted to know. For what he did? Larimar considered the question seriously. Not as mad as I was, she admitted. Anger fades over time if you let it. And holding on to it only hurts you in the end. But you don't love him anymore? Maddox pressed, always getting to the heart of things. That's a very complicated question, sweetheart. Larimar chose her words carefully. The young man I loved doesn't exist anymore. We've both changed too much. But I can appreciate the good father he seems to be to Everest, and I'm willing to see if he can be a good father to you boys as well. This answer seemed to satisfy them, and the conversation turned to more immediate concerns. Homework, dinner plans, and an upcoming school field trip. But Larimar knew this was just the beginning of the complex navigation they would all face in the weeks and months ahead. That night, after the twins were asleep, she found herself drawn to her office bookshelf. There, on the highest shelf, was a first-edition hardcover of Quantum Entanglement by Thayer Blackwell. She hadn't opened it in 10 years, couldn't bear to read the words that had once meant so much to them both. Now, with trembling fingers, she pulled it down and opened the cover. The inscription inside caught her breath. To Larimar, who saw these words before anyone else and believed in them, in me, when I barely believed in myself. All my love, always. Thayer. The handwritten dedication blurred, as tears filled her eyes. Once, she had believed those words with her whole heart. Once, always, had seemed not just possible but inevitable. How naive they had both been. How young, how hopeful, how unprepared for the test that success and fear would bring. Closing the book gently, Larimar replaced it on the shelf. The past was the past. What mattered now was finding a way forward that put the twins' needs first, that built something constructive from the ruins of what had once been. Over the next few weeks, a cautious routine began to establish itself. Thayer and Everest would meet the twins every other weekend, sometimes for outings to museums or parks, sometimes for meals at neutral restaurants. Larimar was always present, maintaining her role as gatekeeper and protector, watching carefully for any signs of distress from the twins. But the boys seemed to be thriving under the new arrangement. They enjoyed Everest's company immensely, forming the kind of instant bond that children often do, unencumbered by the adult's complicated history. And gradually, tentatively, they were warming to Thayer as well. It helped that he approached them with genuine interest rather than forced affection. He asked about their school projects, remembered details about their friends and activities, brought books or games that aligned with their interests. He never tried to buy their affection with extravagant gifts or experiences, seeming to understand instinctively that authenticity mattered more than impressiveness. He's different than I expected, Larimar admitted to Zara one day at the office, after her assistant inquired about how things were progressing. More grounded, despite all his success. People can change in a decade, Zara pointed out reasonably, especially when that decade includes becoming a parent. True. Larimar sighed, setting aside a manuscript she'd been trying to focus on. And he's good with the boys. Patient, attentive. They're starting to look forward to seeing him. And how does that make you feel? Zara's perceptive gaze missed nothing. Conflicted, Larimar admitted. Happy for them, that they're getting to know their father. Wary that he might disappoint them somehow. And sometimes, she hesitated. Sometimes angry that he gets to walk into their lives now, after I did all the hard years alone. That's perfectly reasonable, Zara assured her. You're only human, Larimar. No one expects you to have only noble, selfless feelings about this situation. Before Larimar could respond, her office phone rang, the private line that only a few people had the number for. Larimar Frost, she answered. Larimar, it's Thayer. His voice sounded strained, unusual for a man who typically maintained perfect control. I'm sorry to call you at work, but something's happened. Something important. Are you all right? Is Everest? We're fine, he assured her quickly. It's about us. About what happened 10 years ago. I've discovered something you need to know. What are you talking about? Not over the phone, he said. Can you meet me? Today if possible. It's important, Larimar. More important than I can explain right now. The urgency in his voice convinced her. All right, I can leave in an hour. Where? My office? It's private, and I need to show you some things. Fine. Text me the address. An hour later, Larimar found herself in the gleaming headquarters of Blackwell Technologies, being escorted by an efficient assistant to the top floor. The building screamed success, all glass and steel and cutting-edge design, with Thayer's acclaimed aesthetic sensibility evident in every detail. His office was both exactly what she expected and surprisingly personal. One wall was entirely glass, offering a panoramic view of Manhattan. Another was lined with awards and recognitions. But the third held bookshelves filled not just with business and technology texts, but with literature, including, she noticed immediately, a prominent place for his own novel. Thayer rose from behind his desk when she entered, his expression a complex mix of emotions she couldn't quite read. Thank you for coming, he said, dismissing his assistant with a nod. Please, sit down. What's this about, Thayer? Larimar remained standing, unwilling to cede the psychological advantage of height. You said you discovered something about what happened between us. Why? Yes. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture she remembered from their past. After my mother died 2 years ago, I had her affairs put in storage. I wasn't ready to go through her personal effects then. Last week, I finally started sorting through her papers and found this. He handed Larimar a folder containing what appeared to be printed emails. Her breath caught as she recognized her own name in the correspondence. What is this? She asked, though she was already beginning to understand. Emails between my mother and Nephili, from 10 years ago. Thayer's voice was tight with controlled anger. Read them. Larimar sat down then, her legs suddenly unsteady as she began to read. The emails detailed a calculated campaign orchestrated by Sinov Blackwell, Thayer's controlling mother, to separate him from Larimar. Sinov had believed Larimar was holding Thayer back from his true potential, making him waste his talent on literary pursuits, when he could be leveraging his sudden success for greater wealth and status. She introduced him to me specifically, read one email from Nephili. Said he needed someone who understood ambition, who could help him make the right connections. The literary agent is becoming a problem. Sinov had written in another. She's talking about marriage, family. She'll trap him if we don't intervene. In 2. Most damning of all was an email detailing how Sinov had intercepted messages from Larimar after their breakup. I've blocked her emails and calls to his main accounts. She wrote to Nephili. He doesn't need her emotional manipulations when he's finally making the right choices. Keep him distracted. The separation needs to be clean and permanent. Larimar looked up from the emails, her hands shaking slightly. She blocked my attempts to contact you. She deliberately kept the pregnancy from you. Yes. Thayer's face was drawn, the pain of betrayal evident in his eyes. I never knew you tried to reach me after that night. I thought you had moved on immediately. When I saw Nephili at my apartment. She was there because your mother arranged it. Larimar realized, the pieces falling into place. The whole thing was orchestrated. Not the breakup itself, Thayer clarified, his expression haunted. That mistake was mine alone. I was scared, overwhelmed by sudden success, questioning everything. When my mother suggested I needed space to focus on my career, I listened. I let my fears and her influence override what I really wanted. Which was? You. The single word hung in the air between them. Us. The future we had started planning together. Larimar felt dizzy with the implications of this revelation. For 10 years, she had believed Thayer had simply abandoned her, choosing success and another woman over their relationship. Now she was faced with a more complex truth. That while he had indeed ended their engagement, the absolute silence afterward, his apparent rejection of her attempts to inform him about the pregnancy, had been engineered by his manipulative mother. She wanted a grandchild of the right pedigree. Thayer continued, the disgust evident in his voice. When Nephili got pregnant so quickly after our relationship began, my mother was thrilled. The Vaughn family had the right social connections, the right background, everything she thought you lacked. And you went along with it all, Larimar said, unable to keep the accusation from her voice. I did, he admitted, not defending himself. I was weak, confused, easily influenced by her. By the time I realized what a terrible mistake I'd made, Nephili was pregnant, and I thought you had moved on without a backward glance. So you married her. I did what I thought was right at the time. What my mother convinced me was right. Thayer's laugh was hollow. The irony is, Nephili never wanted to be a mother. She resented the pregnancy, the expectations, all of it. She left when Everest was 3, and I can't even blame her. Our marriage was built on manipulation and mutual unhappiness from the start. Larimar sat in stunned silence, trying to process everything she had learned. The betrayal was deeper than she had ever imagined, but also different. Thayer's abandonment had been his choice, but his continued absence from her life and their children's lives had been, at least in part, engineered by another. Why are you showing me this now? She finally asked. What do you want from me, Thayer? Understanding, perhaps. Not forgiveness. I don't deserve that yet. He moved around the desk to stand closer to her. I want you to know that while I made the initial mistake of ending our engagement, I never knew you tried to tell me about the pregnancy. I never knew about the twins. If I had, his voice broke. If I had known, nothing could have kept me from them. Not my mother, not Nephili, not anything. You can't know that for certain, Larimar challenged. You were very clear about not wanting a family when you ended things. I was young and terrified. Success had hit so fast, and suddenly there were expectations, opportunities, pressures I'd never imagined. He shook his head. But knowing I had children with you, would have changed everything. I would have fought through my fear for them. As you did for Everest, Larimar acknowledged, remembering how he had stepped up as a single father when Nephili left. Yes, being a father changed me fundamentally. Made me reassess every priority, every value my mother had instilled in me. Thayer sat on the edge of his desk, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen in years. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Larimar, but I am asking you to believe that I never, ever would have abandoned our children if I had known they existed. Larimar looked at the evidence before her, at the man before her, and felt the foundations of a decade of anger begin to shift. Not crumble. The pain and abandonment had been real, regardless of the machinations behind them, but shift, allowing room for a more nuanced understanding of what had transpired. The twins should know this, she said finally. Not all the sordid details, but the essence. That you didn't know about them, that you were prevented from knowing. Thank you, Thayer said quietly. That means more than I can express. I'm not doing it for you, Larimar clarified. I'm doing it for them. They deserve to understand their own history. Of course. He hesitated, then added, there's something else. Something I've been working on since I found out about the twins. He handed her another folder, this one containing legal documents. Larimar scanned them, her eyes widening as she realized what she was reading. A trust for the twins? Educational funds? This island. She looked up in shock. This is over $20 million. It's a start, Thayer said simply. It can never make up for the years I missed, but it can secure their futures. College, graduate school if they want it, seed money for whatever ventures they might dream up. We don't need your money, Thayer. I know you don't. You've provided beautifully for them without any help from me. This isn't about need. It's about what's rightfully theirs. His expression was earnest, almost pleading. Please, Larimar, let me do this one thing for them. Let me give them the security that should have been theirs from birth. Larimar studied the documents more carefully. The trusts were structured conservatively, with the twins unable to access the principal until age 25 except for educational expenses. There were no strings attached, no control mechanisms beyond standard fiduciary protections. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "This isn't a decision I can make on the spot." "Of course. Take all the time you need." Thayer's relief was evident. "And Larimar? Thank you for hearing me out. For being willing to consider a different truth than the one you've believed for so long." As she left his office, Larimar felt as though the ground beneath her feet had shifted. The narrative she had constructed over 10 years, of Thayer's callous abandonment, of his clear choice against family, had been complicated by these new revelations. Not erased, not excused, but complicated. What would this mean for their fragile co-parenting arrangement? For the twins' developing relationship with their father? For her own carefully maintained emotional distance from the man who had once been the center of her world? Time would tell. For now, she had 2 boys waiting at home who deserved to know a truth more complex but perhaps less painful than the one she had shared until now. The conversation with the twins that evening was difficult but necessary. Sitting in their cozy living room, with rain pattering against the windows and mugs of hot chocolate warming their hands, Larimar carefully explained what she had learned. "So, he didn't know about us at all?" Finian asked, eyes wide. "His mom kept it a secret?" "Yes," Larimar confirmed. "I tried to contact him after we broke up, but his mother intercepted my messages. She thought I wasn't good enough for him and wanted to keep us apart." "That's messed up," Maddox declared with the straightforward moral clarity of a 10-year-old. "Grandparents aren't supposed to do stuff like that." "No, they're not," Larimar agreed, her heart aching at the thought that the twins had been deprived not only of a father but of grandparents as well. Sinov was gone, and Larimar's own parents had died before the twins were born, leaving them with no extended family beyond Thayer and Everest. "Is that why he looked so shocked when he saw us at the restaurant?" Finian asked, connecting the dots. "Because he didn't know we existed?" "Exactly. Seeing you two was the first time he realized he had sons besides Everest." The twins exchanged one of their silent communications. "So it wasn't really his fault?" Maddox asked cautiously. "That he wasn't around when we were little?" Larimar chose her words carefully. The initial breakup was his choice. He did decide he wasn't ready for marriage or family at that time. But not knowing about you specifically, that wasn't his fault. That was his mother's doing. "And now he wants to be our dad?" Finian's voice held a mix of hope and uncertainty. "He wants to be part of your lives, yes. In whatever way feels comfortable to you both." Larimar reached out to take their hands. "But I want you to understand something very important. Nothing has to change right away. We can take this slowly, figure it out together as we go." "But we'll keep seeing him in Everest, right?" Maddox asked, surprising Larimar with his apparent eagerness. "If that's what you want, absolutely." "Everest said his dad has a lake house with a boat," Finian mentioned casually. "He said maybe we could all go there sometime." "One step at a time," Larimar cautioned with a small smile. "Let's start with day trips before we jump to vacations." As the twins headed to bed later, processing this new information in their own ways, Larimar found herself drawn once again to the family photos that lined their hallway. 10 years of memories. The twins as newborns, as toddlers taking their first steps, as gap-toothed first graders, as the growing boys they were now. A decade of life that Thayer had missed, that could never be recaptured. But perhaps there could be new memories, new photographs. Perhaps the future could hold something different for all of them. With that thought in mind, she reached for her phone and composed a text to Thayer. "The twins know the truth now. About your mother's interference. They seem to want to continue building a relationship with you and Everest. We're taking it slowly, but the door is open." His response came almost immediately. "Thank you, Larimar. I promise I won't let them down again. Or you." The next month brought a gradual strengthening of the tenuous bonds forming between the twins and their father. Outings became more frequent, the boys' initial caution giving way to growing comfort in Thayer's presence. They began to call him directly on the phone. Larimar had given them for emergencies, sharing school achievements, or simply chatting about their day. Everest became a regular visitor to their Brooklyn home, the 3 boys forming a tight-knit trio despite the differences in their upbringings. To Larimar's relief, Thayer never attempted to dazzle the twins with extravagant experiences or gifts, seeming to understand that authenticity mattered more than impressiveness. "He's really trying," Zara observed one evening when she stopped by for dinner and witnessed Thayer dropping Everest off after the 3 boys had spent the afternoon at a science museum. Not like a billionaire throwing money at a problem, but like a dad who wants to be present. I know, Larimar acknowledged, watching through the window as Thayer said goodbye to the twins with the careful affection of someone still learning the boundaries. It's not what I expected. And how are you handling it? Sharing them after all this time? Better than I thought I would, Larimar admitted. It helps that he's so respectful of our routines, our home. He never criticizes or tries to override my parenting decisions. And the trust funds? Have you decided about those? Larimar nodded slowly. I'm going to accept them. Not because we need the money, but because it is their birthright in a way. And it does give me peace of mind about their futures. What she didn't say, couldn't quite articulate even to herself, was how her own feelings toward Thayer were evolving. The anger that had sustained her for a decade was gradually being replaced by something more complex, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. A recognition that they had both been young, both made mistakes, both been manipulated by forces beyond their control. And sometimes, in unguarded moments, she found herself remembering not the pain of their parting but the joy that had preceded it. The brilliant, passionate young writer who had captured her heart. The man who had once looked at her as though she were the center of his universe. Those memories were dangerous, a complication she didn't need in an already complex situation. Better to focus on the practical aspects of their renewed connection, the co-parenting, the schedules, the careful boundaries that kept them in their separate orbits with the twins as the only point of intersection. Until the evening, 6 weeks after their initial park meeting, when those carefully constructed boundaries were tested. The twins had been invited to a classmate's sleepover birthday party, leaving Larimar with a rare evening to herself. She had planned a quiet night of catching up on manuscript reading, perhaps with a glass of wine and the luxury of complete silence. Instead, her doorbell rang just after 7, revealing Thayer on her doorstep, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Thayer? Is everything all right? The boys aren't here, they're at a sleepover. I know, he said, shifting slightly. Maddox texted me earlier. I actually came to see you. Me? Larimar's surprise was evident. Why? Because we've spent 6 weeks talking about schedules and activities, and the twins' needs, but never about us. About what happened. About where we go from here. There is no us, Thayer. There's just 2 people co-parenting children they happen to share. May I come in, please? It's starting to rain. Indeed, a light drizzle had begun to fall, dampening his shoulders and hair. Reluctantly, Larimar stepped back, allowing him into the entryway of her home. 5 minutes, she said, leading him to the living room. Then I really do have work to do. Thank you. Thayer glanced around the warm, book-filled space with appreciation. Your home is beautiful. It feels lived in, happy. At Island, Larimar remained standing, arms crossed protectively. What did you want to discuss? Thayer took a deep breath. I want to apologize properly, not just for the specific wrongs of the past, but for the pain I caused you, for the years you spent raising our sons alone, for everything. You've already apologized, Thayer, multiple times. Not like this. Not without the twins present. Not without the immediate shock of discovery, coloring everything. He met her gaze directly. I need you to know how deeply I regret what happened. Not just because it cost me years with the twins, but because it hurt you. Because I failed the woman I loved more than anyone in the world. The past tense should have been reassuring. Instead, it sent an unexpected pang through Larimar's chest. It was a long time ago, she said, her voice carefully neutral. We were different people then. Were we? Or were we just younger versions of who we are now? Thayer took a step closer. Because I look at you, Larimar, and I still see the brilliant, passionate woman who believed in my writing before anyone else did. Who challenged me to be better, to dig deeper, to find the truth in my words. Don't, she warned, feeling dangerous emotions stirring beneath her practiced composure. Don't romanticize the past, Thayer. It doesn't help anyone. I'm not romanticizing. I'm acknowledging. Another step closer. I'm acknowledging that what we had was real and precious. That I threw it away out of fear and weakness. That not a day has gone by in 10 years when I haven't thought of you, wondered where you were, if you were happy. Stop. Larimar raised a hand between them. This isn't why you're in my life again. You are here for the twins, not for whatever this island. I'm here for all of it. Thayer said quietly. For the chance to know my sons, yes. But also for the chance to make amends to you. To see if there's anything left to salvage from the wreckage I created. There isn't. The words came automatically, a defense mechanism honed over years of protecting her heart. Too much has happened. Too much time has passed. Too much. Has it? Or are we just afraid to find out? Thayer's gaze was steady, penetrating. Because I see the way you still tense when our hands accidentally touch passing a plate at lunch. I notice how you still finish my sentences sometimes, still anticipate my thoughts before I express them. Some connections don't disappear, Larimar, no matter how much time passes. And some wounds don't heal, she countered, her voice tight with suppressed emotion. Some betrayals cut too deep. I know, he nodded, accepting this truth. I'm not asking for forgiveness or a second chance. Not yet. I'm just asking you to consider the possibility that there might be more here than just co-parents navigating a complicated situation. I can't. Larimar shook her head, the words barely audible. I can't go back there, Thayer. I rebuilt my life without you. I created something solid, something safe for the twins and for myself. I can't risk that for feelings that might not even be real anymore. I understand. Thayer stepped back, respecting her boundaries both physical and emotional. But know this, Larimar. What I felt for you was the truest thing in my life. My biggest regret isn't the success I might have missed or the years I lost with the twins, though those are profound. My biggest regret is losing you. Hurting you. Failing the one person who saw me clearly and loved me anyway. Before she could respond, he moved toward the door. I should go. Thank you for hearing me out. And Larimar, take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time. After he left, Larimar stood motionless in her living room, her carefully constructed defenses crumbling like sand castles against the tide. For 10 years, she had channeled her pain into productivity, her heartbreak into determination. She had built a successful career, raised remarkable children, created a life filled with meaning and purpose. But she had never allowed herself to fully examine the wound left by Thayer's abandonment, had never acknowledged how completely she had loved him, how devastating his rejection had been, had never truly grieved what might have been. Now, with his words echoing in her mind, with the new understanding of how they had both been manipulated, she found herself facing questions she had buried for a decade. Could there be a way forward that wasn't just about co-parenting? Could the connection they had once shared, a connection powerful enough to produce two extraordinary children, still exist in some form? And if it did, was she brave enough to explore it? These were questions without easy answers. Questions that would take time, careful consideration, and perhaps most challenging of all, a willingness to risk her heart again. For now, she would focus on what was certain, her love for the twins, their growing relationship with their father and half-brother, the delicate new family configuration they were all navigating together. The rest would unfold in its own time, revealing whether the past could be not just reconciled but perhaps, in some new form, redeemed. If you believe that some relationships deserve a second chance, or if you've ever had to navigate complicated family dynamics, hit that like button. And if you want to see how this family's journey continues to unfold, subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth. The road to healing is rarely straight, but it's always worth traveling, especially when children's hearts are involved. 1 year later. Mom, Dad's here with Everest. Finian's excited call from the front door brought a smile to Larimar's lips as she finished setting the dining room table. The casual use of Dad still caught her by surprise sometimes, though the twins had been calling Thayer that for several months now. It had happened naturally, without discussion or declaration, just a gradual shift from Thayer to Dad that seemed to satisfy something deep within all of them. Tell them to come in, she called back, straightening the centerpiece, a handmade creation from the boys featuring autumn leaves and pine cones from their recent hiking trip. The past year had transformed their lives in ways Larimar could never have predicted that day in the restaurant when she first spotted Thayer across the room. What had begun as cautious, supervised visits had evolved into a genuine family connection, with Thayer and Everest becoming integral parts of the twins' world. The revelation about Sinov's manipulation had been a turning point, allowing both Larimar and Thayer to view their shared past with more nuance and less bitterness. Not erasing the pain or the mistakes, but providing context that made forgiveness possible. Something smells amazing, Thayer said as he entered the dining room, a bottle of wine in one hand and a bouquet of lilies, Larimar's favorite, in the other. The boys' cooking experiment was successful? Moderately, Larimar laughed, accepting both offerings. The kitchen may never recover, but the lasagna is actually quite good. We followed Grandma Rose's recipe exactly, Maddox informed his father proudly, referring to Larimar's late mother whose handwritten recipe cards were family treasures. Except when Finn decided to experiment with the spices. It needed more basil. Finian defended himself. Art is about intuition, not just following rules. Cooking is science, not art, Maddox countered, the familiar argument bringing smiles to the adults' faces. It's both, Everest declared diplomatically, having learned to navigate the twins' good-natured debates over the past year. Like Dad's work, part technology, part creative thinking. Why? Well said, Thayer approved, ruffling his son's hair. Now, who's going to give me the tour of this famous vegetable garden I've been hearing so much about? The three boys immediately volunteered, leading Thayer to the small backyard where their summer project, an elaborate raised bed garden, had produced a surprising bounty of tomatoes, herbs, and leafy greens. Larimar watched through the kitchen window as Thayer listened with genuine interest to their explanations, asking questions and admiring their handiwork with the attention he once reserved for billion-dollar tech acquisitions. It still amazed her how completely he had restructured his life to prioritize fatherhood. He had delegated day-to-day operations at Blackwell Technologies to a trusted leadership team, maintaining strategic oversight, but stepping back from the relentless pace that had once defined him. He had purchased a brownstone just 10 blocks from Larimar's, creating a home where the twins had their own rooms for their increasingly frequent stays. He attended school events, coached Maddox's chess club, read Finian's stories with the same careful attention he once gave to business proposals. In short, he had become the father the twins deserved, present, engaged, genuinely invested in their lives and happiness. And somewhere along the way, as she watched this transformation, Larimar's carefully guarded heart had begun to thaw. It hadn't happened all at once. There had been no dramatic reconciliation, no sweeping declarations. Just small moments of connection, accumulating over time. Shared laughter at the twins' antics. Quiet conversations after the boys were asleep. The gradual rebuilding of trust, one day at a time. Their first kiss, tentative, questioning, had come 6 months after that rainy night when Thayer had appeared on her doorstep. They had been co-chaperoning a school field trip to the Museum of Natural History, the boys racing ahead to the dinosaur exhibit, leaving them momentarily alone beside a display about quantum physics. "This reminds me of your book," Larimar had said, gesturing to the exhibit on entanglement, the theory that once two particles interact, they remain connected regardless of distance or time. "Some connections can't be broken," Thayer had agreed, his gaze steady on hers. "Only temporarily suspended." Boom. And then, with the hesitation of someone approaching something precious and fragile, he had leaned forward and brushed his lips against hers. A question, not a demand. An invitation, not an assumption. She had surprised herself by responding, by allowing herself to feel what she had denied for so long, that beneath the pain and anger, the love had never truly died. It had simply gone dormant, waiting for the right conditions to bloom again. Since then, they had been cautiously exploring this renewed connection, taking things slowly for the sake of the boys and their own healing. No dramatic gestures, no moving in together, no rushing to recapture what had been lost. Just the patient building of something new from the foundations of what had come before. "Dinner's ready," Larimar called through the open door, bringing the garden tour to a close. As they gathered around the table, 3 excited boys describing their latest school projects, Thayer listening with genuine interest, Larimar watching the family she never thought possible. She felt a sense of completion she had not experienced in years. Not perfection, there were still complex emotions to navigate, still moments of doubt or remembered pain. But a wholeness that honored both the difficult journey and the unexpected destination. Later, after dinner was cleared, and the boys were engrossed in a board game in the living room, Thayer joined Larimar on the back porch, where she sat wrapped in a light blanket against the October chill. "They're plotting world domination in there," he observed with a smile, nodding toward the house where excited voices could be heard debating strategy. "Everest and Finian have formed an alliance against Maddox." "Poor Maddox," Larimar laughed, "always outnumbered by the dreamers. He'll hold his own. He always does." Thayer sat beside her on the porch swing, careful to maintain a respectful distance. Even now, with their relationship slowly rekindling, he never presumed, never pushed beyond what she was ready for. "Thank you for dinner, for including us in your Sunday tradition." "They wanted you here," Larimar said simply. "They're proud of that garden, proud of the meal they helped create. They wanted to share it with you. And you? Thayer asked quietly. Did you want me here too? Larimar met his gaze in the gathering twilight. Yes, she admitted. I did. The simple acknowledgement hung between them, weighted with all that had been lost and found. I've been thinking, Thayer said after a moment, about everything that's happened this past year, about the incredible gift you've given me by allowing me into the twins' lives, into your life. It wasn't entirely altruistic, Larimar pointed out. They needed to know you, to understand where they come from. Still, you could have made it much harder. You had every right to. He took a deep breath. And I've been thinking about the future, about what comes next for all of us. Thayer. Not a proposal, he assured her quickly, reading her sudden tension. I know we're not there yet, may never be there. I'm talking about something more practical. Such as? The boys are getting older. Their activities are multiplying. The back and forth between our houses works for now, but it's not ideal long term. He hesitated, then continued. I found a property. A double brownstone that could be renovated into 2 separate but connected homes. Shared common spaces for the boys, private spaces for us. A solution that gives everyone both togetherness and independence. Larimar stared at him, caught between surprise at the practicality of the suggestion and wariness at what it might imply. You want us to live together, but separately? I want us to consider a living arrangement that puts the boys' needs first while respecting where we are in our relationship. Thayer's expression was earnest, thoughtful. No pressure, no expectations beyond what naturally develops between us. Just a practical solution to the logistical challenges we're facing. No. It was such a Thayer suggestion, innovative, efficient, addressing multiple needs simultaneously. And yet, beneath the practicality, she sensed the deeper yearning he rarely expressed directly anymore, the hope for a future where they might be a true family in every sense. I need to see this property, she said finally, to think about what it would mean for all of us. Of course. Take all the time you need. His smile was gentle, patient. We've learned the hard way what happens when we rush important decisions. Yes, we have. Larimar pulled her blanket tighter against a sudden breeze. But we've also learned that sometimes the greatest mistakes can lead to unexpected gifts. Thayer's eyes softened with understanding, like 3 remarkable boys who make every day an adventure. Exactly. She smiled, the expression reaching her eyes in a way it hadn't for years when Thayer was concerned. And perhaps other gifts as well, still being unwrapped, still revealing themselves day by day. I can be patient, Thayer said quietly. Some things are worth waiting for. Inside, the boys' excited voices rose in celebration as someone, likely Maddox, judging by the triumphant tone, claimed victory in their game. The sound drew answering smiles from both adults, a shared moment of parental pride and joy. Whatever the future held for them romantically, they had already achieved something precious and unexpected, a family knitted together from painful fragments, stronger at the broken places. Not the family they had once imagined in their youth, but perhaps something better. Something tempered by experience, deepened by struggle, illuminated by the hard-won wisdom that comes only through loss and redemption. As they rose to join the boys inside, Thayer's hand brushed Larimar's, a touch that might have been accidental but lingered just long enough to suggest intention. And Larimar, to her own mild surprise, found herself turning her palm to meet his, their fingers intertwining in the gentle, tentative way of those discovering that some connections, once formed, never truly break. They only wait for the right moment to reveal themselves again. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Lux Love Chronicles with Mr. Wentworth for more powerful narratives about love, forgiveness, and family. Comment below with your thoughts on whether some mistakes can truly be redeemed, and how we navigate the complex terrain of blended families and second chances. Remember that even in our darkest moments, unexpected joy may be waiting just around the corner, if we have the courage to open our hearts to its possibility.